On September 2, 2020, in Huntington Beach, California, 25-year-old Laura Sardinha was fatally stabbed by her estranged boyfriend, Craig J. Charon. Craig, a 39-year-old former Air Force veteran and combat medic, had been dating Laura for several months. However, their relationship was marred by violence. In 2019, Craig had caused Laura serious harm, perforating her eardrum in an earlier attack. Despite this, Laura continued to struggle to break free from his abusive grip. On the morning of September 2nd, Laura had returned to her apartment and was in the process of securing her safety. She had taken the important step of having the locks changed on her door to prevent Craig from entering, but somehow he managed to slip past the newly changed locks and into her home. At 1:15 p.m., as Laura was on a three-way call with her mother and best friend, she saw Craig inside the apartment. She immediately cried out, "Oh my God, he's here." Her friend, hearing the terror in Laura's voice, hung up and dialed 911. But before help could arrive, Laura called her friend back, leaving the final haunting voicemail. "He's gonna end my life. Get away from me." Laura's screams for help were evidence of the terror she felt in her final moments. As the police arrived, they found her lifeless body with multiple stab wounds to her chest and a nearly severed nose. Craig, however, was not immediately arrested. Instead, he was found with what appeared to be self-inflicted wounds to his chest and neck. The authorities later speculated that he had wounded himself to create the illusion of a self-defense claim, but the evidence pointed to him being the aggressor. Standing at 9 inches taller than Laura and significantly more muscular, Craig was the dominant figure in the confrontation. As the investigation continued, it was revealed that Craig had a history of abusive behavior. 3 of his ex-girlfriends testified against him, each recounting how they had to take out restraining orders against him due to his violent tendencies. One woman had been choked, another slapped, and a third had been pinned against a wall. Yet he refused to take responsibility for his actions. He claimed to have acted in self-defense during the incident with Laura, but his history of violence and control painted a different picture. He had made it clear that he would stop at nothing to keep Laura in his life, even if it meant resorting to slaying. Laura's family was devastated by her demise. Her mother, Marie Sardinha, addressed the court during the sentencing, saying, "All Laura wanted was to be free of the abuse and the torment." Her brother, Sean Sardinha, shared the profound pain he felt, saying that he now gives updates of his life to a blue vase. On April 29, 2025, at the sentencing, Judge Michael Cassidy described Craig's actions as senseless and brutal. He was sentenced to 26 years to life in prison, the maximum sentence allowed by law. Despite the gravity of the situation, Craig showed no remorse. He made no statements during the sentencing, offering neither an apology nor an explanation for his actions. His defense attorney argued that his violent history was merely non-slaying violence and suggested that he may have acted in the heat of passion. But the court saw through this claim, recognizing the calculated nature of the crime. The chilling voicemail left by Laura only reinforced the conclusion that Craig had methodically and ruthlessly taken her life. Laura had once dreamed of becoming a psychologist to help other women in abusive relationships, but she would never get the chance to fulfill that ambition. She had been awarded a $750,000 settlement from a motorcycle accident, and she had planned to use that money to open a therapy practice. But those plans were shattered when Craig violently took her life. Laura's family, devastated by the loss, vowed to honor her memory and continue her work, advocating for victims of abuse and raising awareness about the dangers of intimate partner violence. George Anthony DeVolder Santos, born on July 22, 1988, had grown up in a modest family in Queens, New York. Despite coming from humble beginnings, George harbored ambitious dreams. He claimed to have graduated from Baruch College and worked for prestigious firms like Goldman Sachs and Citigroup. However, none of these claims were true, and his fabricated biography would soon unravel. In 2020, George ran for Congress in New York's 3rd Congressional District, losing to Tom Suozzi. But when Tom announced he would not seek re-election in 2022, George seized the opportunity and ran again, ultimately winning the seat. He made history as the first openly LGBTQ+ Republican elected to Congress. But soon after his victory, reports surfaced revealing that much of George's background was a complete fabrication. Once in office, he faced intense scrutiny. Investigations revealed that his financial disclosures were riddled with inconsistencies and false claims about his wealth. He was actively involved in criminal schemes, including wire fraud and identity theft. George and his campaign treasurer, Nancy Marks, had devised a scheme to inflate the funds raised during the 2022 election cycle by submitting falsified reports to the Federal Election Commission. These reports misled both the FEC and the public, claiming that George's family members had made significant donations, which they had not. George's criminal activities escalated further between 2020 and 2022. He used credit card information from unsuspecting campaign donors without their consent, funneling the funds into both his campaign accounts and personal bank accounts. To cover up his illegal transactions, he falsely reported the donations as coming from other sources, including his family. Some of his victims were vulnerable, elderly donors, many of whom had cognitive impairments. In 2022, George created a limited liability company called the Divolder Organization, claiming it was a consulting firm. He falsely reported large sums of money from this company, using the funds to support his extravagant lifestyle. Investigators later found no legitimate clients for the organization, and his financial disclosures were full of discrepancies. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, George, despite still being employed and earning a salary, applied for and received over $24,000 in unemployment benefits, falsely claiming that he had been unemployed since March 2020. Perhaps the most serious of George's lies came in his financial disclosures to the U.S. House of Representatives, where he falsely reported earning $750,000 from his so-called consulting firm. He also claimed to have millions in assets, including substantial checking and savings accounts. But when investigators dug deeper, they discovered that these claims were entirely fabricated. The FBI and the IRS conducted a thorough investigation, uncovering a pattern of deceit that spanned multiple fraudulent schemes. George even involved his family members in the fraud, with his mother, Fatima Divolder, being scrutinized for possibly being complicit in the scheme or simply deceived by her son. By May 2023, the federal authorities had enough evidence to indict George on multiple charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. He was arrested and agreed to a plea deal in August 2024, pleading guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. On April 25, 2025, George was sentenced to 87 months in prison. U.S. District Judge Joanna Siebert called his actions a betrayal of the public trust, stating, "Public officials who deceive the public and betray the trust of their constituents must face the consequences of their actions." In addition to his prison sentence, George was ordered to pay $374,000 in restitution to his victims and over $200,000 in forfeiture. George's sentencing was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as long overdue, while others questioned why it took so long for the truth to emerge. Regardless of public opinion, his actions left a stain on American politics, and his career was effectively over. He had been expelled from Congress in December 2023, and despite his attempts to return to politics in 2024, the damage was irreversible. George posted on X, "Well, darlings, the curtain falls, the spotlight dims, and the rhinestones are packed. From the halls of Congress to the chaos of cable news, what a ride it's been. Was it messy? Always. Glamorous? Occasionally? Honest? I tried most days. I may be leaving the stage, for now, but trust me, legends never truly exit.